where a Dalí docent is going to dive deep into some of the aspects of our museum's permanent collection. This series really gives our docents a chance to delve into a Dalínian subject of their choice. But I couldn't pass up the chance, while we all are gathered together, to share a little bit more about the Dalí Volunteer Program. So at the Dalí, our volunteers share their time and talent in a myriad of ways. They help out with our education team, visitor experience, marketing, even operations here at the museum. Our volunteers help the museum provide our mission to our guests every day and making sure that we are educating and inspiring our public. We literally could not do this without them. Our regular volunteer program is accepting volunteers ages 16 and up all year long. But in addition to our regular volunteer program, the Dalí is thrilled to be hosting for its 5th year the Summer Volunteen Program. This free program is open to high school students ages 14 and up, and the goal of this program is introducing these students to the world of volunteerism and giving them a chance to learn a little bit more about museum careers. The application for this program is already available on our museum's website, and the deadline to apply if you're interested will be May 31st. To learn more about any of these opportunities or about our Dalí Volunteer Program, please feel welcome to visit our museum website, thedalí.org, or you can ask any staff member for Simone's card, and I would be happy to connect with you and share more about our programming. As usual, I couldn't go on without supporting our members. Thank you so much to our members for making programming like this at the museum possible. We have one more Docent Deep Dive on the calendar after Peggy's fabulous presentation today. We will hear from Dana next week. So if you are loving what you've been hearing so far throughout April, please feel welcome to reserve your ticket online on our museum website for next week's Docent Deep Dive as well. Now, I have the honor to share a little bit more about today's speaker, Peggy Stark. Peggy is a journalist, designer, photographer, and teacher living and working in St. Petersburg, Florida. She has been a docent at the Dalí Museum for a little over a year and teaches restorative yoga and meditation at Nava Yoga. Her studio, Stark Design, specializes in the design of newspapers, news publications, books, magazines, corporate identities, catalogs, and websites. She is currently designing the 10th anniversary of Shine book. Peggy was creative director and designer of Bay Magazine of the Tampa Bay Times, where she was the art director for several years. She also held management positions at the Detroit News, where she was the graphics editor, and the Detroit Free Press, where she was the graphics director. Peggy also served as director of graphics and design at the Poynter Institute, where she was a member of their faculty for many years. To be transparent with you, it is a challenge to fit all of Peggy's accomplishments and experience into a few moments. So please know this is only a glimpse of her expertise. I am happy to share that there will be time for a Q&A portion after today's lecture, so please feel welcome to hold any questions that you may have. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today, Peggy, and thank you all for joining us. Please welcome to the stage, Peggy Stark.
Thank you, Simone. Of course, I appreciate that. And John, am I alive right now? I'm good. Okay, great. I don't have a very big voice, so I asked for a lavalier mic, but it's so great to have you here today. And I wanted to give a shout out to Simone, thank you so much, and her whole team, and they lead all of us volunteers and direct all of the programs and do a fabulous job. Thank you for that. And John, thank you for being up there in the booth, coordinating and directing the presentation today. So happy to have you here. And this topic, the golden ratio, I didn't know if it would draw many people because it sounds kind of like nerd alert, you know? But so I said to Simone this morning, maybe we should have called it Finding the Gold, you know, that maybe. But I'm so glad that so many people showed up for this, so thank you very much. The reason that I wanted to present this material is because, frankly, I did not know what the golden ratio was and how it worked. And I had heard about it and I incorporated it into my work starting in art school way back when we were taught the golden ratio and the golden rectangle and how to use it. But I must admit that I did it, but I didn't know why, and I didn't know the interior meaning that's embedded in the golden ratio. So when I was at the Poynter Institute, I was teaching journalists, designers, and I was asked to teach the golden ratio for designers. And I thought, boy, oh boy, I better get down and really understand how this is done. So I contacted a math professor and a physics professor at Carleton University, and I visited them and I took all my notes and all my work, and I thought, oh my God, I know what they're going to do when they try to explain the golden ratio. They're going to give me a list of equations that I'll sit there nodding and saying, but not understanding it all, and then leaving just as confused. But instead, something magical happened that I'm going to share with you today. So, we're going to start out by thinking about the golden ratio and how Dalí worked with it, and then how I work with it in my design. So we're going to see what it is and where it came from, why it's golden, where it's found, look at Dalí's work, and then a little bit of my work. So let's begin. What is the golden ratio? It's a number. So what these math and physics professors help me understand is, let's just simplify it. So it's a number, 1.618. So where does this come from? Well, we recognize and talk about the golden rectangle, right? We've all heard of that. The golden ratio is embedded in that. So let's make a golden rectangle using that special golden ratio number 1.618. So it's easy to make a golden rectangle. You start with a square, even sides, 3 inches, this one. You multiply it by the golden ratio, 1.618, and you get 4.85, which is the entire width of a rectangle, which is a golden rectangle. So we just made one. Easy, right? Not hard to do. So whenever you're stuck and you're thinking, oh, how do I do that? Start with a square, multiply it 1.618, you get your golden rectangle. The cool thing about it is golden rectangles exist everywhere. And once you learn to see it, you can't unsee it, if you know what I mean. And golden rectangles can be used horizontally, vertically, on an angle, wherever. Now, you can tell if a rectangle is golden or not by reversing that math. So, for example, here are 2 rectangles on the screen. Now, the top rectangle we're going to measure first to see if it's a golden rectangle. And how do you do that? You take the entire measure, which is 5.5, and you divide it now by the golden ratio, 1.618, and the result is 3.4 inches. That would make up the square. Do you follow me? But on this one, it's 2.3 inches here, and if we made that square, it would be 2.3 inches. So it's not a golden rectangle. You see what I mean? So, and it's sad because it's not golden. But, but this one is happy because it is golden. So if we took this 4.5 measure, divided it by the golden ratio, we would come up with the short length of that rectangle, which is 2.78, which this is. Now, how does all of this work within our world, and where did it come from? It was first mentioned in 300 BC by Euclid in his writings, and he's supposed to be the founder of geometry. But then it's put to use by a man by the name of Phidias in 490, who was the architect of the Parthenon. He put the golden rectangle to use in the building of the Parthenon and said something interesting that is really related to the shape of the golden rectangle. He said, that he alone had seen the exact image of the gods, and that he revealed it to man through the Parthenon. Now that's interesting because the Parthenon was a temple that is made to honor Athena, the god Athena. So the golden rectangle he was using in sort of a divine way. And here is the Parthenon, and these are the actual diagrams from the Parthenon that Phidias drew. And within those, you can see multiples of golden rectangles. Isn't that interesting? So the entire building is based on a golden rectangle. And then within the drawing, you see embedded golden rectangles, golden rectangles, golden rectangles, even down to the little tops of the columns in the building. Isn't that cool? So he embedded that golden rectangle over and over and over again. We call the golden ratio number 1.615. We also call it phi. Why? Those are the first three letters of Phidias's name, and that's where that comes from. Let's go a little deeper. Why is this called golden? This is what I was asking the math and physics professors. They told me it's also called divine, and it's also called perfect proportion. And I, of course, said, but why? I mean, why is it? This is where I expected the big equation. And this is where the magic happened for me. And this is why I became so passionate about using the golden ratio, because they said phi is a number that exists in nature and we don't know why. Then they said it's a mystical number. I don't know about you, but I can understand mystical things better than I can math equations. So when they said that, it was like, oh, okay, now I kind of get it. So to have a math and physics professor tell me something is mystical, that alone just blew my mind, and I loved it. Isn't that cool? I get very excited about this. So not only that, but we find that when the Greeks were working with the golden rectangle, they went on a search to find that golden rectangle elsewhere. They found it in artifacts and art that people were doing in their communities. For example, here is a Greek vase, falls right within the golden rectangle. Do you see that? Over here we have a wall mural, falls exactly within the golden rectangle. But here's the cool part. What the Greeks said and discovered, this artist had a unique ability to incorporate that golden rectangle in their work. And it seemed intuitive. Now let me ask you, because I know we all interested in art have that same gift. So when you see something, a shape, don't you always know if it's just right or if it's a little off, right? You know that. That is what the Greeks said was a gift from the gods. So they considered the fact that artists and artisans could make things and they would fall within this perfect shape of the golden rectangle, and said that was a gift from the gods. Well, when Phidias made the Parthenon, he used it as well. It was a temple to the god Athena. So it became almost a spiritual thing in their language and in their work. They also found it in nature, and often when we see the golden rectangle, we see the nautilus shell, right? Why is that? Well, embedded within the golden rectangle, which is right here, is a growth in the golden rectangle that we see in nature. So when we look at the growth of a flower, the spiral growth, or the growth of this sunflower, or even in our bodies, embedded within our bodies, things fall within the shape of the golden rectangle. Isn't that cool? But there's something else that goes on, and that is the spiral growth. The spiral growth of the golden rectangle is really important because it's related to the Fibonacci series of numbers. We're not going to spend a lot of time here. I don't want to go deep into the weeds, of all of this, but it's important because we have something we refer to here in the museum with the Fibonacci series of numbers that were discovered in 1204, 1202, and here are the Fibonacci series of numbers. And it sounds complicated, but it's really easy. So you just add one number to the number next to it, and then you get the next number in the series. You see what I mean? So 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13, and so on. When we look at the golden rectangle, if you start multiplying this times this, this times this, it falls within the Fibonacci series of numbers. Now, here is an exact example of how that spiral is growing. And so, for example, when I said that within the golden rectangle, the Fibonacci series of numbers is embedded in that, again, if you took 5, multiplied it by the golden ratio, you'd come up with 8. So the Fibonacci series of numbers, if you multiplied 21 by 1.618, you come up with 34. So that's the relationship, right? Does that sort of make sense? Okay, if it's unclear, we can go over it. But we're talking about it in relation to Dalí, and here in the Dalí Museum, on our tours, we talk about this spiral staircase. It's not just there for decoration. It's there because it's based on the Fibonacci series of numbers that we know Dalí incorporated into his work. So let's move on. We're going to go back to the golden rectangle because we know Leonardo da Vinci illustrated a book by Pacioli called On the Divine Proportion. There's that word again, divine proportion. There's Leonardo. He's working 1452 to 1519. He drew this, the Vitruvian Man. We've all seen this, right? Well, the cool thing about what he did and what he wrote about is that our bodies fall within the perfect golden ratio. So if we were to measure from our belly button down, get a number, multiply it by 1.618, we'd come up with our height. And we're going to do that a little bit later at the end with a volunteer in the audience. And so, for example, I'm 5'3", and if I measure from my feet to my belly button, it's like 39. 39 times 1.618 comes up to 63 inches. So, and it works for everybody, no matter how short or tall you are, unless you're way out of proportion. So, Da Vinci referred it to perfect proportion or divine proportion. So here's how we do it, real easy. And you can do this at home. It'd be fun at a dinner party, right? And I told Dale he didn't have to take his clothes off, or we don't have to do that. But you measure, what was that?
I was disappointed.
So you measure from your belly button to your feet, multiply it by 1.618, and you come up with the perfect golden rectangle. Isn't that cool? Yeah.
May I ask you a question? My full adult height was 5'5".
Uh-huh.
I recently have shrunk to 5'3.5".
Yes.
And I've told my doctor said at about the age of 35 we start shrinking. So does that mean we lose proportion at that point?
I think we do a little bit. I know I have. It's a good question. Did you all hear that? Like, as we sort of get a little bit shorter with age, do we get out of proportion? Perhaps. That's a good question. Yeah. So let's keep going. The other cool thing that Da Vinci did, of course, all these measures in our body, like this part, the bone on your fingers, that falls within a perfect golden rectangle. Also, from here to here is the height. So the measure here to here is our height as well. So let's keep going. Da Vinci also, oh my God, this is so helpful to me when I try to draw faces. He also embedded that perfect golden rectangle into faces in portraits. So helpful when you're drawing. But let's go back to the cool thing about the golden rectangle being divine, close to the gods. We find that if you look at some architectural drawings of churches, like the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, built in 1163, that this part of the church, which is the sanctuary, the holiest part of the church, based on a golden rectangle. Architects use this over and over in their work, and especially in churches, so that maybe we could be closer to God. Interesting? Love that. You find it everywhere. Once you see it, then you see it everywhere. You know, a credit card falls right within the golden rectangle. Artists use the golden rectangle, and this goes back to intuition. Botticelli was not measuring his canvases and didn't have rulers and all of that to do his paintings, but we find often with artists, even those who are not mathematically inclined like me, will do paintings or drawings where things fall within that shape because it feels right. Artists have this intuition to see that. Isn't that beautiful? That is Botticelli, Birth of Venus. We also see it in Hokusai. Not only do we see the golden rectangle, but now we see that spiral growth. Mondrian, here is his painting here, and here is my golden rectangle I found. Embedded in Mondrian's work, tons of golden rectangles. Seurat was not only an artist, but he was a mathematician too. He did measure his canvas. Seurat was also one of the pointillist painters where little dots of color were put onto the canvas. Up close, you can't figure out what it is, but as you step back, your mind and your eyes blend the colors together, a scientific principle. So he was not only measuring his canvas, but look at that line in the golden rectangle falls right on the line of the painting where it's divided. Now let's look at some of Dalí's works. So, Young Woman at a Window. We know that Dalí was a great lover of math and science. His favorite magazine was Scientific American. When he discovered a lot of these things like the golden ratio, the Fibonacci series of numbers, when Buckminster Fuller did his geodesic dome, when Crick and Watson discovered the DNA molecule, Dalí was all over that. I often wonder, what would he be doing in today's world with AI? You know, don't you think he would be like way beyond everybody as far as understanding it and incorporating it in a really interesting and cool way? But if we look at his work, we know that he had that interest. We don't know, in some cases like this, if he actually was measuring, but we know Dalí also had that intuition to understand perfect proportion. So in this painting, Young Woman at a Window, you can see that this falls within a perfect golden rectangle. In this painting called Giant Flying Mocha Cup with a 5-meter appendage, titles I love, here is the painting, and if you embed a golden rectangle in that painting, it falls right within a golden rectangle shape. I even went to our collection and started, I wasn't measuring the canvas, don't worry, I wasn't touching anything. But I took I was looking at photos and I was measuring photos. Well, the window within Gala contemplating the Mediterranean Sea, the window itself right here, perfect golden rectangle, and right here, the head with the Chanel bow on top, perfect golden rectangle. I'm sure there are more in here, but maybe now when you look at our collection, you might start finding them yourself, right? And in this one, this famous nature mort, still life, fast moving, is a classic example of how the golden rectangle is embedded into Dalí's work. We know at this time he was really fascinated with Heisenberg and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle that in my lay explanation, it's things are either in motion or still, and we don't see both at the same time, but in Dalí's work, we do. So in this particular painting, we have in our collection not only this painting, but this, which is the underlying grid that Dalí used for Nature More. Isn't that cool? That's in our collection. And if we took this underlying grid and laid it on top of the painting, you could see how all of the materials in the painting are falling on lines and in shapes. So here's the painting again, and focus right here, because the painting itself is not the shape of a golden rectangle, but Dalí used a golden rectangle to divide the space. You see this right here? And there it is. He also used it to collect up materials like that part of the painting. And in these shapes, part of the tablecloth, the bottle, and this hand with the shell over here were also placed within perfect golden rectangles. Interesting? Now, there's also something else going on. Remember the Fibonacci series of numbers in the spiral? Well, we know that this head of cauliflower grows on the Fibonacci series of numbers or the spiral. There's a spiral here. There's this spiral here. This, though, represents the DNA double helix molecule. And this little thing jutting in, this hand with a rhinoceros horn, we know the rhinoceros horn grows on the perfect spiral of the Fibonacci series of numbers. So he incorporated it a number of times in this painting. In this particular painting, The Last Supper that hangs in the National Gallery, it's a beauty. But the division of space is fascinating. So we look at it, we see two golden rectangles on either side of the painting. So the painting itself is not a golden rectangle, but he's positioning the objects in these golden rectangles, and look where Christ is and God is within a perfect golden rectangle, divine proportion, closer to God. Fascinating. So look again, the table itself and the golden rectangle. Also, I just put those spirals in to show you how perfectly this is organized. There's something else going on, and that is that Dalí was working with the polyhedra, the five-sided shape form in this particular painting. Now, I put this here because this was done by Leonardo da Vinci. Look at the same called polyhedra shape. Da Vinci was a student of Pacioli, the person who we mentioned earlier, who wrote the Divine Proportion. And at the time that Dalí was working with the polyhedra, he was fascinated with and became good friends with a mathematician by the name of Gica. So this is where all of this comes from. Dalí was a great lover of Da Vinci, followed his work, read his work, saw his work. So he's not only working with the golden rectangle, but goes beyond that to include this shape. And this is where it gets really complicated, but really fascinating. The more you keep drawing on the golden rectangle and using the golden ratio to make shapes, you can come up with some incredible things. This is the pentagram, the polyhedra, and the golden ratio. I'm going to go through this quickly because we're going to get to some other stuff. But if you look at a triangle in the pentagram and you measure the width, in this case 2 inches, you multiply it by the golden ratio, you come up with the length of the 2 sides of the triangle. And that's how you come up with the pentagram. Isn't that interesting? And to me it is. I don't know if it is. But the other cool thing is you can build and build on this. If you take that polyhedra that you created with a golden rectangle, then look at this measure right here. It becomes a perfect golden rectangle as well. So see, we could go on and on and on forever. We won't do that. But isn't it sort of fun to see how math, you know, it's not that stuff like you sit in a lab and do equations. I mean, visually it makes sense to me anyway. I hope it does to you too. And then in this painting, Lita Atomica, look what Dalí does. This is the sketch for this that Dalí did. Like I said, like Da Vinci, who was influenced by Pacioli all his life, Dalí was influenced by Gica. And Gica was a mathematician who drew all of these diagrams and wrote books about golden ratios and diagrams. So Dalí borrowed one of the diagrams, the polyhedra here and the pentagram, and based this painting on that diagram. And the Ecumenical Council that is in our collection. If you look at that and you start taking it apart, you will see that that polyhedra is also working within that, and the pentagram as well. And this painting we know was done with an underlying grid that Dalí created using this image of the polyhedra to create that painting. The other thing about that painting that it's made with 2 golden rectangles. And on tours, the way I explain this painting, the Ecumenical Council, is that I say that it's about the coronation of Pope John the 23rd. I always say it was a heavenly event and it was an earthly event. And so what Dalí did is he helped separate the earthly event from the heavenly event. Now we're going to go into just a book that I designed for the Dalí Museum of Clyde Butcher, and the museum sent Clyde Butcher, our famous Florida photographer, to Spain to photograph the areas of Spain that Dalí was influenced by. And he came back with these amazing photos like this. They were amazing. So I'm not going to go into the details of designing the book, but I did use the golden rectangle in the book design. And I'll tell you why. When we saw all of this work in the team that included Hank Hine and Peter Tush, who wrote the book, we talked about the photos themselves. They were all black and white. They were gorgeous, and they were quiet. So the brief for the book said to design a book just showing this, but showing how Dalí was influenced. So from a design standpoint, I always have to have a spirit before I design anything. And the spirit was the design had to whisper and the photos had to sing. So the design of the book was based on a golden rectangle to allow the text and the things that were not Clyde Butcher's images to have space to breathe and to live on their own. So the book was designed on a golden rectangle. So I took a golden rectangle, put it on the page. We knew the book had to be horizontal because we know from visual perception studies that people calm down when they see horizontal things. So the book is very horizontal so that the reader calms down and can really get into the imagery. So this golden rectangle then is divided into several columns where images and text will fall, and it all works within the golden rectangle. So here are two facing pages. It looks super complicated. It's not. So here is the opening of the book, and I place the picture of Clyde Butcher in a perfect golden rectangle to start the story. And here are inside pages showing you how the golden rectangle was sort of the container for the text and the images. However, more important, it allowed the images to breathe. Do you see what I mean? There's lots of negative space, but it's not arbitrary. Nothing is arbitrary. It's all based on the grid system and the golden rectangle to make sure that everything felt right. Now, when I use the golden rectangle and grids, I always think of them as subliminal. The reader isn't going to write to the museum and go, you know what, that 20-column grid didn't work in that book. You know, they're not going to say that, but they'll know if it's not right. It's that intuition. Isn't that beautiful? And then we keep going on so you can see how the golden rectangle is used over and over and over again till the end result. These are some inside pages. The other thing that doesn't have anything to do with the golden rectangle, but it's fun, is this is a Dalí painting, and this was inspired by this landscape. When Hank and I were talking about showing Dalí's work in the book, we both talked about if they're in color, it's really going to take away from Butcher's work. So we put all of Dalí's work throughout the book in black and white as well. And that was a big thing to do. And I was glad that we did that in the end because it really allows Clyde Butcher's work to show through, but the rest of it sort of whispers. You know, it's just like a hint. And then this was done for Bay Magazine, and I don't have golden rectangles I placed on top of the images, but I wanted to show you this next page because maybe you will start seeing now golden rectangles. So this was about that beautiful Florida Southern College. Oh my God, it's amazing. It's where Frank Lloyd Wright designed all the buildings. I always think of it sort of a sketchbook of Frank Lloyd Wright because some of the buildings are so cool and then some are kind of unusual, like they look a bit unfinished. But in order to design it, I thought, aha, he was an architect. He was very much into measures and diagrams and math. So let's try some golden rectangle work in this. And these are the 2-page spreads out of Bay Magazine. I haven't embedded the golden rectangle. I just want you to sort of see the shapes that are forming out of this. So at this point, do we have a volunteer in the audience? Okay. We're going to see if Leonardo was right. Dale is going to come up here and be my volunteer, all unscripted. And first of all, you know, I told you that I'm 5'3", so that's 63 inches. I measured myself earlier. You'll just have to trust me. So from my feet to my belly button is 39 inches times the golden ratio, 1.618, comes up with 63 inches. So I'm short. Dale, how tall are you?
6'1".
6'1", okay. Okay, 6'1", we're gonna see if it works. So 6'1" is how many inches? 70, thank you, Janice, 73 inches. Okay, so we're going to measure you from your feet to your belly button. What if it doesn't work? Like a magic show, you know, when the woman doesn't disappear?
Is it me?
We'll see. Now, can you put this up to your belly button?
I would rather you do it.
Oh, see, you made me nervous. Okay,
That's what I
So-
felt like doing.
okay.
Okay. Here,
Right about right there.
That is exactly.
Hold on. Okay. And, okay, hold on, everybody. What does that say? Does that say 44?
Right there says 44.
44, okay. Let's try it, everybody. So this is 44. Let's see if you're in perfect proportion. Times 1.618. Has somebody already done it? I'll do it. 1.168. Now, if it doesn't work, we'll just say it usually works. Okay, let's do this. 44 times 1.618 equals 72 inches. Is that what we are? Oh, close, very close. All right, good job. Phew, I'm glad that worked. So, and you see how much taller, you're like 10 inches taller than I am. And so, but we both fall within the golden proportion. What I'm trying to say is that we're all perfect proportion. So you've all been amazing to be here. Thank you so much. And where is the clicker? Oh, okay. Keep this up? Okay, yes, Janice, your question.
Are you ready to open for questions?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Simone. And we're okay on time?
We are great on time, but I want to give you a round of applause before we open the questions.
Oh, thank you.
Will you be my mentor?
You're my mentor, Janice.
Hey, if you'll take it back to where you had that one picture where we had showing Femme Couché from the rocks that you said that he was inspired by the rock. That one.
Yeah.
Do you know where those rocks are?
Where are they?
Uh-huh.
Well, they're in Cape, aren't they in
Cap de Creus?
Port Lagat?
Port
Yeah.
you got? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just knew if you knew that exact location. That's all I was asking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's in the text. I'll get the book and find out for you.
Okay, I can look it up. I can look it up. But thank you so much.
But I'm glad you brought that up, and I didn't explain that correctly, is that Clyde Butcher was sent to the area of Spain where Dalí lived and worked, which was the Cape of, the Bay of Cadaqués. Cape de Creus and Port Lagat, that whole sort of northeast part of Spain. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. You are something else, girlfriend.
You're sweet. Anybody else have a question, or do you want to be measured?
Hi there.
Sure, yes.
Thank you for all your work to put into this presentation. It was wonderful. You took what could be a boring or over-the-head topic and made it simple, so it's wonderful. I guess it's just more like a comment. I was thinking about our standard photography type sizes are not in the golden rectangle, 6 by 9, 8 by 10, 11 by 14. It was just, it was just a thought, really, if you had any thoughts on it or whatever.
I wonder about that too, so I don't have, I always wonder about that. I'm not sure. I wish I knew the answer to that, Sorry, oh, go ahead.
Is there a golden triangle? Is the base times 1.618, is that called a golden triangle?
You can call it a golden triangle, but it would be the isosceles triangle. So those two sides. So here, let's go to that slide. That's a good question, So here. So, so 2 inches multiplied by 1.618 comes up with that side. So the isosceles triangle, those two sides are the result of 2 inches multiplied by the golden ratio. And some people refer to that as the golden triangle. I don't, but Yes.
The framework is selecting a map
Yes.
or an out of proportion photo. Is that a way to bring it into
Yes, it can be, yeah. And a lot of times, you know, my background is a lot in news design, and it's a very long shape, you know, like very broad. And what I often do when I'm working with designers is this, and this really works if you have a project you might be working on or something you're designing at home. So let's say the newspaper is like this, right? That's not a golden rectangle, but a lot of people have trouble with proportion. And so what I often do is, let's say that there's text here and text here, then I have people embed a golden rectangle in their page, and then inside this page, they can design stuff. And then that makes it more in proportion. It sort of pulls it together. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that is a good question. Bill?
Can I use this to decorate my house?
Yes, you can. You certainly can. Yeah, I use it a lot. Yeah.
What would I do?
Oh, what would you do? Oh, okay. So I'm thinking of my dining room, and I have a golden rectangle table. What a surprise. And, and so I have a rug that's not quite a golden rectangle, so I position the table in a way so that it fits within a golden rectangle. I'd have to help you with this, I think. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Anyone else? Oh, you've been such a great group to work with. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your good comments. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Simone. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Dale, thank you. You're a doll. You are. I appreciate it. I have to give you. Now I'm taller than you. Thank you. Oh.